For sure. Now, like how I came to know about you and your positioning in the marketplace, I've always seen you as I don't see you as a normal syndicator like a lot of syndicators are, right? Like you stand uh different, apart from everyone else because of your book, your shows. So share with us a little bit insight in the things that you do to position yourself as an authority in the marketplace. And yeah, and also give us a background on how it came to be. Did you start out with already knowing, hey, this is how I'm gonna position myself, and what was that growth like?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the backstory. When I started, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. I had no clue. I was like, I don't know. How am I going to do this? No idea. And then starting the meetup was really powerful because there's a difference between being an expert and being a leader, right? An expert is they're like a professor. They know everything about
Mm,
everything. But a leader can just simply be someone in the front of the room who's helping moderate and ask questions and whatever. And so this first meetup that we started, the first meeting we had, I promoted to everybody. I did a bunch of promotion for it. We had 60 people in the room, right? So I'm in front of
wow.
the room and this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, Bronson, I do one of your deals." And I had to do a double take. Are you talking to me? What in the world? But again, he saw me as a leader in that space. And then in that same room, I met another guy who had a deal who was looking to raise capital for it. So literally it was just connecting. That's really what capital raising is. It's basically taking a deal and connecting it with money and helping to solve those problems. So to me, like I did that, I raised 100K and then it was about 6 months. I didn't really raise more capital. And it was just, I was really trying. Am I going to raise capital? Am I going to find deals? What am I going to do? How am I going to scale this up? And there's so much noise out there when it comes to podcasts and just putting yourself out there. There's just so much stuff as well. There's just so many things you can do with your time. And so what I did is I started to look at people that were very successful, that were having a big impact. And I was at this event, and it was a high ticket event. It was actually on a cruise. It was an investor cruise, which is funny to say an investor cruise, but it was there. And somebody at the table, one of these round tables, said, "It's like that quote from that motivational speaker, Jim Rohn. If Jim Rohn, you can look up his stuff. He's incredible." And he said, "Make yourself valuable to valuable people." And I'd never heard that before, Tim. I just always thought this person. And if you think about how you approach somebody that's very successful, most people will approach you, Tim, and you're a highly successful guy, and say, "Hey, I want this. Can you coach me? Can you teach me? Can you do this?" People just want stuff, right? And then we do that. And we want to help. But if somebody shows up and says, "Hey, Tim, I see your business. Have you thought about this element that could maybe make it much more effective in this area?" That's a very powerful way to approach somebody who's at the next level. So what I realized is there was somebody I really respected who was in the industry, who was a syndicator, but they were mostly teaching people how to raise capital. And I just came up and I said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something on your business." They blew me off initially, but then we met by the martini bar. So on a cruise in the martini bar, I just said, "How's it going in this area of your business? Is there any way I can help?" And it led to this conversation to be able to grow. And so I came on board with him for 18 months. And I went from, again, raising 100K, having 62 calls and in-person visits with friends and family and having zero invest. So I'm not having success at this point. I'm really frustrated. Some of you guys may be frustrated. Capital raising when it starts, it's challenging. But then I went to basically joining his group, being the capital, the investor relations guy. I had 1,000 one-on-one phone calls over the next
Mm.
18 months, and we raised 15 million together. And this was while working my full-time job, right? So I was doing it at 6 in the morning. I was doing it at lunch. I was doing it in the afternoon. I had some windshield time in the car. I would take a Tuesday off and just literally schedule 20 calls back to back. Imagine an all day of 10 hours of calls. And if you're not feeling well, that's not a great day. But again, I think that partnership is what really launched me. And I saw what he did and I learned what he did. And eventually I launched and did the same thing from what I saw him do.
That's amazing. That's a part of the business that a lot of people don't think about. But what you went, I think of that as the old day apprenticeship almost, and earn while you learn kind of thing. And it's a great way of going about the business. This is one of the reasons why I love raising money for top operators, is because I get to learn so much about them, their business, how they run the business, than starting out and raising money for another newbie syndicator. Just similar to me,
Right.
it's like the blind leading the blind. So
Right.
I love that approach to how you did that. And in that case, was he the one that generating all the leads and you're just taking the calls and converting them, or did you also generate leads yourself as well?
So what we did is he was more focused on active capital raise like yourself, more focused on the active side. And so I said, what if we had podcasts and we had shows related to this? So
Mm,
he had me help outline and put together some short videos or do some collaborative things together. And so that was very helpful to see how to create content, and I've always been pretty comfortable with talking and sharing, but it's different when you're creating content. And then he had a course actually of how you build a platform, really a thought leadership platform. And he let me audit it or take it. And even though I'd worked with him for a year, there was stuff that kind of blew my mind. I didn't realize you can basically create this thought leadership platform, and everything you do, you have a lead magnet, you have things that you draw people in, you grow your list, you create things like books or resources or shows or ways that you can grow your list. And that's really what it's about. It's really the game. It's just trying to reach more and more people. And if you create enough value, and then there's ways you can do ads, there's some things you can do to scale that up as well. But yeah, so for me, I think being a part of that, it definitely was a paid internship, paid apprenticeship. But I did make a lot of money. I probably made $1 million through that, probably, which is great. But the thing I learned the most was just it was the value I got from seeing how he did it, what he was doing, being the kind of the dumb guy, hey, why does this work? And I'm not necessarily, I always tell myself I'm not a tech guy, but I'm like, okay, I got to learn this. I got to learn this because some people, if you can just figure out enough so you can teach someone else, you can continue to scale. That's really the key to scale is learn. If you learn it, you can teach it, right? So if I learn it, I can give it to a VA, I can teach it to someone else and be able to scale up.
that's very cool. Let's dive into that, like the whole sort of your gameplay and your whole what you implemented first and next, and whether it's after leaving the company and you're on your own now, like what are the things that you put in place to start to build your authority, your brand, and attracting investors?
Yeah, we worked together. This partner and I, we worked together for about a year and a half, and I'm still partners on some deals with them and stuff, and it was great. But there came a point where I was like, okay, I need to launch my own thing now. It's like the partnership. They looked at it and said, we're paying Bronson so much money to do this investor relations. Why don't we just hire a full-time investor relations a person just to do this? And so I was hoping we'd scale more. Again, sometimes life happens, and it's okay. This was a God thing. It's time to go launch on your own. I basically created, and this is one thing I learned from him, is that I think as a capital raiser, if you don't have a lead magnet, if you don't have some way to capture, and you should have it on your website, you should talk about it when you're on a podcast. I would say don't go on podcasts, don't do all this stuff unless you have some way that you have some giveaway where people will sign up for it and then they'll get on your list, get added to it. Because otherwise you'll go do all this effort and then people forget about you. So a lead magnet, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically a free ebook. It could be a checklist. It could be all kinds of different things, a survey, a questionnaire, and people go in and they exchange something of value, which is their email or their information for what you're giving them. And so that's huge. That's really kind of the biggest thing to grow the list. But what I did is I also didn't quite know how to get started. I thought there's many podcasts out there. I don't know if I want to be another podcast. And what I did is I ended up starting the most successful thing I actually started was this panel. I started a panel series once a month. We call it the BE Investor Panel or their monthly event. And we've had Ken McElroy. We had a guy named Harry Dent, who's an economist. We have a tax strategy coming up next week. We have all kinds of different events. Typically, are on multifamily or investing. We do stuff about precious metals. We've done stuff on inflation. We've done different things. Some economic people coming in. And basically, what we do is I try to get with 3 or 4 people and say, hey, you guys all show up. If you promote it, I'll share the list with you. And so they may share the list, right? And then I get to share the list with them. We've had some that have shared it. An influencer, an economic guy named George Gammon came on once, and
Yep.
he shared it with his list of 20,000. So we had, I think, over 1,000 sign up for that event, and maybe we had a few hundred live. Some of these events, you never know who's going to promote it. And then again, it's just really creating value for them. Sometimes all they have to do is just show up or give it to their team, and they can be spotlighted as an expert. And that kind of blew my mind, actually, Tim. I didn't realize here I'm this kind of unknown figure. I try to present myself a certain way, but nobody really knew who I was. And my first webinar was me explaining the multifamily outlook for next year. And I had 13 people, including my mom or something else. And then a year later, it was like Ken McElroy and Michael Blanc and Rod Khleif. I was
Wow.
like, wow, this is incredible. But those panels are something that are really unique that I could offer. And so that's been something we've done pretty much every month for the last 3 or 4 years. I've enjoyed it. But what it's done 2 things. One is it's done a lot of things. It brings people in by having other people promote it. They bring it in, they see a certain person, they bring it in. And then when I'm on stage with Ken McElroy and Jason Hartman and whoever else, like they'll be like, oh, I know these other guys, but who's this guy Bronson? And so then I'm presented from a marketing perspective or branding perspective that I'm a peer, right? If you want to elevate
Yep.
your brand, you've got to be associated with people that are above where you're at. And that's how you really elevate your brand.